Obviously, this video will contain spoilers for Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1. So, that was the first episode of the second season, The Mandalorian Chapter 9. And it definitely was what I had expected. Sometimes it was slightly better, sometimes slightly worse than I had expected. Most of the time we spent on Tatooine. Like, we're always going back to this damn sand planet. And probably we will still be there next week. But actually, I liked many part of this episode, namely the depiction of the Tuscans, all these scenes of them sitting around the fire, caring for their bantas, teaming up and working together. They add so much needed complexity to these people who were earlier in Star Wars often framed as these vicious and violent, almost inhuman raiders. Like, these characters have the problem of constantly wearing that mask, and it makes them so distant from being human that they appear just like stormtroopers, only more monstrous. And we knew from last season that Mando wouldn't fight with the Tuscans, and then we got the scene where they helped him find Mos Pelgo, so we knew he would prevent any fighting between Cobb Vanth and the Tuscans, or the town and the Tuscans, even though there were tensions between these groups. But I think these brief scenes where the everyday lives of the Tuscans were shown, their bickering, their living situations, these were one of the most beautiful scenes of The Mandalorian, and especially in this episode. And like, I want Star Wars to be exactly like this. And specifically, I want to talk about Din Djarin and these dog-like animals of the Tuscans. The scene with the massives. Not only was it a nice callback to Mando and the Blurgs in Chapter 1, like, he couldn't handle these much less dangerous creatures in Chapter 1, but then he had learned how to behave and he knew how to handle them, and now he applied that knowledge to these monster dogs, and I think that was just really good and beautiful. And I hope that it would somehow foreshadow how Mando would handle the Great Dragon problem. But obviously, I was wrong. However, using a mythological lens while looking at this fight and slaying monsters, I think there's a lot to say, a lot positive to say about slaying dragons or monsters or beasts, and generally that entire theme. But that's not really what I do, not my area of knowledge. I bet What the Force, the podcast, and their episode will talk about it, and they can explain this so much better than I can. And I will link their episode, and you really should check them out. But how amazing would it have been if Mando had found a way to communicate with the dragon, like with Tuscans and their dogs? If they would have found a way to live together in this desert, either in ignorance of each other or in symbiosis. But as in the episode with the Matorn, the dragon was gruesomely slain and no one really cared about it. There were no consequences to it. They were all happy and celebrated that they had won. And slaying a monster is a really violent, bloody task. And I think the framing of it and the implications, I don't really like them. Monsters in almost every story are like this simplistic, evil hurdle for the hero to overcome. And my point is, these monsters are purely fictional. We have in the real world no monsters. We have humans doing abhorrent things. We have systems created by humans that cause inhuman pain and may appear as monstrous. We have dangerous animals and natural disasters. but we have no monsters like the Great Dragon or giant demon boars. Killing the monster in stories is the easy way out, and so I want to see fiction where another solution is found to humans living near monsters. Even if I would say slaying a monster in fictional stories has its reasons and isn't a bad thing, but I just hope that in the future there will be a bigger variety of solutions to the monster problem. And at the end, I want to talk about Temuera Morrison's character, who we saw at the end of the episode during the last few seconds. And I'm completely sure he will fight Mando at some point during the season. You cannot introduce a character like that, like they did with him, and not have him fight Mando at some point. He was this lone figure standing in the desert, his back to the audience. He was observing our hero. He had this big, massive weapon on his back. Then he turned around and we saw his face. And this few seconds we had of him, if he had been an innocent bystander or even some kind of guardian angel of Mando, they would have introduced him and shown him differently. And to show him the way they did implies that he has an unknown goal, an unknown motivation. And Mando is somehow in the way of it, or a part of the plan, or a risk to it. And I'm really excited to see how this will all play out. We are at the end of this little recap, this little discussion and outlook of the new Mandalorian episodes. Obviously, I could expand on some of these topics, and some I didn't even mention, like Cobb Vanth, the whole thing with him, I didn't even mention. I left out the whole first minutes with these underground fight club type of characters, but I also didn't talk much about this whole monster thing. This could be a whole hour-long discussion about monsters and their role in fiction. But talking about all of that would blow up this format. I'm already over my 5-minute mark. So now I'll go and listen to all the other amazing people watching and talking about Mando. I'll link them below, and I hope I'll see you again next week. This is the way.